and recording is in progress. And if we can have roll call, that would be great. Is that Tracy? No, who wants to do roll call?
Okay,
Happy.
Virginia, I will. Supervisor Bass,
Here.
Supervisor Wilson,
Present.
Corey Weber,
Here.
Cheryl Dillingham,
Here.
Michael Evenson,
Here.
and County Advisory Staff Alicia Hayes,
Here.
Karen Paz Dominguez,
Here.
John Bartholomew,
Here.
Tom Matson.
I'm here, but I want to qualify, I'm not officially a advisory member, I'm just a department head.
All right, that's fine. Everyone is present and accounted for.
Great, thank you, Kathy. So the first order of business is the approval of the last audit committee meeting minutes. Was everyone able to look through that? And did anyone see any issues? They look fine, thumbs up. Mike, all looks good. So, well, without objection, we'll just move forward on, we'll accept those through the chair. All right, so we will move on to public comment. We do have a lot of attendees. So if you are wanting to make public comment on, this is actually interesting. I will ask public comment on general public comment, not on the agenda. Alicia, this is kind of a new thing, or just any at all? Just once, okay. Sorry, we haven't actually had many folks on before, so I want to make sure I give people the opportunity to speak. So if you are a member of the public and you'd like to comment, now would be the time to do so. And if you are on my phone, press *9 to raise your hand, or if you're on Zoom, just click the raise hand button. And I'm not seeing any hands go up. Kathy, do you see any? Just making sure. Nope. All right, so then we will move beyond that and start the work. And I know everyone's very busy right now, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here. So we have a lot of things under administrative matters and timing of charter responsibilities. So I believe we do have, Alicia, did you want to chime in on that before I hand it over to Rich? Okay.
Yes. So Clifton Larson Allen has performed our single audit since fiscal year 16-17. Prior to that, we used Galena LLP for the previous 7 years. Galena and CLA merged together, and hence that transition over to CLA, which is Clifton Larson Allen. The county hasn't conducted an RFP for audit services in more than a decade. In order to ensure independence, the audit firm is required to swap out the lead principal every 6 years. So Rich Gonzalez has been our principal since we have been with CLA, and the principal would be switched in fiscal year 22-23 if we were to stay with CLA. In my opinion, CLA has performed well in accordance with the contract agreements, but I would be curious to hear Ms. Paz Dominguez's opinions on this specific item.
Thank you. And thank you, Auditor Controller, for being here today. I know you were under the gun for a lot of things. So did you were able to hear what Ms. Hayes said, or the question she asked?
Yes, we have a great working relationship with Rich Gonzalez and his team at CLA. They know our organization. They put in a lot of work to help us restructure our chart of accounts and develop our financial statements. I don't think you're going to find any firms that have that institutional knowledge with our specific organization. I would be supportive of continuing the engagement with CLA.
Okay, thank you. So Alicia, sorry.
That is all. I think on this matter, we would just like the audit committee to make a recommendation to continue with CLA or to pursue an RFP to select a new audit firm.
Okay.
And to receive public comment.
Okay.
I'm supportive of that through the chair.
Okay. To stay with who we have?
Yeah.
Okay. What about other members? Anyone have a preference or anything different?
I'm supportive of staying with Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay,
I am too.
all right. Well, and we could take a motion or we could go to public comment first. If you are on and listening and you wish to make a public comment on this, either press *9 if you're on the phone to raise your hand or press the raise hand icon on your computer. Once again, I'm not seeing any hands go up. Anyone else? All right, so we'll come back to the committee. So it would be
Through the chair,
appropriate.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, it's just a agenda question. I was just looking at the order with B, C, and D, and I was wondering, and this is maybe a question for the CAO's office. C and D are kind of, these are odd items that are time sensitive in the current context, right? And in terms of just, I think it's from my preference is that we address those first, just so that we know we get to them, we get an update on just an update where we are, because that's what we're asking for, I think. And this is just, what's the status so that we can move things forward. It just seems to me. And then if we want to go into the inquiries of those other questions, those are kind of ongoing issues. And so it just seems like these are time sensitive, and I'd like to get to the time sensitive things first, because we've sometimes had long meetings here.
Well, we could do that. What I will say is everything on here, in my estimation, is important because there were some misunderstandings apparently from the previous meeting that I would like to have us be able to be on the same page with as we move forward into the future. But we can certainly take those items that you want, and one way or the other, we'll get that feedback on the other items as well. So I'm hearing you say you'd rather go to, well, we haven't finished this one first. So is there a motion to continue to stay with our current?
Yes,
firm?
if it requires a motion, then I'm happy to make that.
I think I'm just used to saying, is there a motion?
Because
second?
this is just a recommendation. We're not actually hiring them. So I think nods of approval is probably good enough.
Okay, well, I'll ask, since
I
this
could
is
be
a fairly
wrong.
new, this fairly new group and we don't have any attorneys on here. So I just always get a little bit, I'm concerned, but I mean, is there anyone who has an issue with it? And if there's no disagreement, then I think we can assume that it's good to go. Will that work for CAO's office?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there was that one. So, and Supervisor Wilson, Vice Chair Wilson, which one did you want to pull up next?
I think the annual financial statement review would be, it has a timing issue associated with it. And I just want to make sure that we get to that. And then the next one will be the annual single audit review. Both of those have some timing things I'd like us to
Sounds good.
see where we're at. And then we can get to the other
All
stuff.
righty. So I guess we'll go to the CAO's office for that, or?
Yeah,
us in the
and
direction?
just one point of order, since you didn't take public comment on the item A, I think when we go back to section 1, the timing of the charter responsibilities, you can take public comment on everything under that section. Just so
Okay.
those listening in know that opportunity will be provided.
Yes, please just,
The annual financial statement review is under the purview of the Auditor Controller's Office in conjunction with Rich Gonzalez. They are both here, so I would pass it over to them to inform the committee on where they are at in that process.
all right, thank you. Auditor Controller Dominguez, Paz Dominguez, sorry.
Yes, so I have the CLA portal up on my screen. It is the website where we upload all of our documents, any corroborating evidence they may request, as well as reconciliations. It's a combination portal, so it includes requests for both the financial statement audit and the single audit. There are 89 items requested. A lot of these items are routine and requested every year. However, historically, this county has not provided documentation for many of these items. The Auditor Controller's Office has been working on developing reconciliation spreadsheets for these items that have never existed in the past. And we have been working with the IT division of the CAO department on creating reports that gather information that previously was not available to us using the former system. There are several outstanding items that will require coordination with other departments. So it's not necessarily just an auditor controller function. For example, the Department of Human Resources and the County Administrative Office do hire external consultants to prepare valuation reports and actuarial reports that are required for the audit. I think they've been contracted. I'm not sure what the status is on those. There's also going to be a litigation letter that needs to be prepared by County Counsel and by the Risk Management Division of the Human Resources Department, where they outline all of the outstanding claims against the county and any potential claims. There are outstanding items that my department is responsible for. We do have limited staffing capacity right now because we are catching up on a lot of our backlog as well as training new hires. So we haven't seen the progress that we would have liked to see, but we are actively working on these items every day. When I logged on this morning, I noticed that we had new inquiries requesting specific backup for some of the payments that we've issued. And this is an item that I believe will be a recurring theme as we have these audit committee meetings about what is required backup for issuing payments, as I'm aware that comes up a lot in conversation. So as I'm submitting these items, I'm not sure how quickly it takes for the portals to update CLA, but I do know that they are waiting on us for several of these items. The other thing is our audit also encompasses our dependent special districts. And so it requires coordination with the 12 or 13 dependent districts and their audits. They operate independently of the county by practice, but on paper they are dependent. And so sometimes there is a challenge with getting some of that requested information. As of right now, there are still several outstanding items that need to be reconciled and submitted, and we are working diligently on it. We are training new accountants, and we will be working in collaboration with the Human Resources Department, as well as other departments like Aviation and Public Works to help us with capital assets as they retain most of those projects, the construction in progress, completed contracts, committed contracts, all of that information requires coordination with those departments.
Okay, Mike, did we also want to hear from, I think Rich Gonzalez is on here too as well, correct?
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch base on what some of the timelines associated with these things are at some
Okay.
point in this discussion.
All right. And Rich is, there he is. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Good morning, supervisors, members of the committee. Thanks for having me on thanks for asking me to join your meeting today. So with the audit this year, you're all aware that the deadline's been extended to September 30th. So because of the COVID, our concern is if we're not able to start on the audit soon, we're not going to meet that deadline. The other issue we have is we begin our 2021 audits in September. So we're not going to have any staffing to perform this audit if we're not able to begin it soon. So I'm hoping we could coordinate a target date like well before the deadline so we can start our testing and reporting. So I just want to get a sense of when to schedule the audit for 2020, including the single audit.
Great. Thank you, Rich. I see Karen has her hand up. Is first names okay with everybody today? I call you by first name? If not, okay, thanks. It's just easier that way. Karen.
There is an item I'd like to clarify too. As I submit information for this audit, it will kind of be both years in one. Part of one audit requires testing of subsequent events, which includes the current year, well, fiscal year 2021. So when CLA gets ready to prepare or to start the audit for 2021, they will have a majority of the information already because it was required for subsequent testing of the prior fiscal year. In terms of timelines, I think I'm gonna need some assistance here because we are doing the best we can already, and it appears to not be meeting the needs of certain entities or agencies. I'm not quite sure who I can ask for help because this requires accounting skill, the ability to reconcile hundreds and hundreds of funds and to be able to originate reconciliations that have never existed before. I am only one person. I'm happy to keep working on this. I'm happy to keep training the staff here in the Auditor Controller Department, but I think there needs to be some more collaboration amongst departments, and I would like to request assistance.
Thank you, Karen. I'd like to ask our acting CAO, let's ask Alicia. Yes, I think all departments are fairly stressed as well. What would you suggest that we could be able to do to bring in the resources that Karen needs to actually make this happen? It seems like, to me, it seems confusing that 2 years, maybe numbers are going in. And I mean, thank goodness, I'm not an accountant and nor would I ever want to be. And it's like all those numbers can go wrong. So Alicia, do you have any ideas of what we can do, or maybe Rich, to provide assistance to get us? Oh, I see Scott on here also. So whoever wants to talk.
Well, we are already engaged with Scott Johnson and Macias. I'm drawing a blank on it. The MGO is what we call them in short. So they are fantastic to work with and very well suited to step in and assist. And we already have those contracts in place to be able to provide that resource. So I think that would probably be my first go-to option. And Scott can speak to his availability over the next, couple weeks. We could also, reach out to departments and see if we could tap some of their fiscal staff for a short period of time. I would, defer to Ms. Paz Dominguez as to whether or not she thinks there is the skill set across the organization that would be helpful in that arena. Our office is happy to work closely with the auditor controller to identify any other resources that might be helpful in order to make sure that this audit is completed. I also want to add in, Karen, I'm not aware of any pending items with our office for the audit, but there has been a shift in leadership. So maybe that's something that has fallen off with Amy's departure. So if you could send me any needs of our office, I will make that a top priority. And same with human resources. If you could loop me into that, then I can work with their office to make sure that we get you everything you need. And then finally, I'd like to hear from Rich. He, indicated that the deadline is coming and his staff is pressed. So can you speak to a sort of drop dead date of when you would like to have everything from us in order to meet the deadlines?
I don't have a drop dead date right now, but we would definitely want to start in August. If the records are clean, we should be able to complete the audit within a 2-month time period, but that's assuming everything is clean and the departments are responsive as far as our request. And we've done it before, so it could happen. But, once we're, if we don't have anything in August, there's no way we're going to complete it in September.
So thank you for mentioning that, because that's one of the reasons why, we talked about changing this meeting or putting it off until August, but I was under the understanding that there was a time crunch. So thank you, Rich, for clarifying that. So how soon? Okay, so I guess the question would be, I'll ask Karen, if MGO steps in to help and some departments, how quickly, what do when you hear August, what are your thoughts on being able to make that, and what do we need to pull together to help make that happen for you?
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I'm conflicted right now because there are several projects that require immediate attention besides the audit. As you're aware, the Human Resources Department has requested assistance from my department with the processing of payroll. And we are working with Scott Johnson and MGO on stabilizing that process. That happens every week. We're also working with MGO on developing bank reconciliation procedures so that we can establish that with the treasurer tax collector. There are several open audits that my department assists with that are not the financial statement audit and the single audit. So it's a matter of prioritization for this organization. I would like to prioritize the audit, and there needs to be a countywide understanding that that makes me unavailable for other requests that are not as critical or as urgent. I think it is possible to complete this and get all of the last items so that CLA can begin the audit in August. And I would like support from this committee and from the board so that other departments understand I will not be as available as they need me to be for other tasks and other projects.
So I guess my question for you, it would be easier for me if I knew what the other things that were going to be that we can't get around to, whether it's, is it just our departments? Is it community organizations? I mean, we have, like you said, we work with a lot of outside agencies, and there are a lot of moving parts. And it would be helpful for me to kind of have a prioritization of what won't get done, so that at least we as a board, when people call us, might be able to provide information. And I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just going, okay, prioritize. That means other things are going to go down the list, and it would just be really helpful for me if how we identify those. And I don't know if there's an answer to that yet.
Well, one that I can think of pretty quickly is the independent special districts and the expectations they have of our department. There is an expectation based on prior informal spoken agreements with prior auditor controllers that we will perform all of the regulatory reporting and all of the accounting and bookkeeping for these independent special districts for free. They do not contribute to the county for these services, but they do expect us to perform them. I think it needs to be communicated to the independent special districts that they are responsible for their own accounting activity and for their own regulatory reporting. If they want those services from the county, there need to be agreements established and the resources put into the auditor controller department so that we can actually perform those services. Without that, it leads to frustration on both ends and dissatisfaction on both ends. So that would be one that I wouldn't prioritize because it is not part of our function. It is not dictated by government code. For the county side, it's not necessarily that we won't complete the tasks, it's that they won't be done right now. We are constantly in recovery mode. This is our first pandemic, and we survived because of the plans we implemented when the power was shut off the first time. We are still trying to catch up. We are now in the best position we've been in 2 years with 11 staff. All of the employees that were previously on leave have either come back or resigned. We have 3 open vacancies. We have 2 brand new employees that are 2 weeks old in our department. There's a lot of daily operational tasks that require our attention, getting checks out, getting EFTs issued, reviewing accounts payable, processing journals, processing budget updates. There's the entire property tax function. All of those things I can't put aside. And so when I talk about prioritization, I mean all of the special requests, all of the meeting requests, all of the phone call requests and specialized training requests. We are also being expected to train staff in other departments. If that is the case where we should be training staff in other departments, then maybe there should be a restructuring of that workforce to put them under the auditor controller so that that training is actually invested in long-term functions, I guess. I don't have a list for you. What are the exact things that will be put aside? but more just theory and idea to hopefully paint a picture. If you do want me to develop a list, I can do that, and I would likely ask Scott Johnson of NGO for help with that. They've been working with us on our staffing study, so they would be able to help us prioritize things by what is dictated by government code, what is dictated by county policy, and what are items that are really optional and desires rather than needs.
Yes, Scott. In the shadows.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Scott Johnson, I'm a partner at NGO. And sorry, I can't find the raise hand button on the screen, so I just raised my hand. We'd be happy to work with your auditor controller, looking at, to her point related to the priorities on what needs to be accomplished and performed. We can help and provide operational assistance. We can do fund reconciliations. There's a lot we can do to assist. And as your acting county administrator had pointed out, there is a contract that we have that we're performing other tasks. So we have a pretty broad contract in which your auditor controller has the flexibility to ask us to perform tasks. So I can work offline with your auditor controller, Karen Paz Dominguez, on prioritizing those and getting the resources, to assist the county to get things moving along and assist.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, I thought Mike had a question, but I think you're just doing that. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're still like circling around the annual financial statement
Yes.
review.
Yeah, well, we went to it. We need to get something in so it can be started in August. So that's where these other conversations are coming, is how do we help the auditor's office get things to Rich Gonzalez? I mean, my understanding. Yes, Karen.
I would like to request NGO's help on a specific task that I didn't just remember it, but I just remembered it. It's the payroll quarterlies for the last quarter that ended. They've done it before. If they're up for it, that would be a easy, quick task that we could check off the list. And that one is due on July 31st. But if there's one less thing for me to do, that would open me up to gather more information for the audit.
To the chair, Madam Chair.
Yes.
We will definitely coordinate directly with Karen on the payroll quarterlies. We have a team, as Karen mentioned, that performed a previous quarter payroll tax return. So definitely something that our team can provide assistance on.
Okay. So, Rich, what are your thoughts on what it sounds like, or I think looks like we'll be able to pull together resources to hopefully get you information in August. When you say August, is it just generally August, or are you talking what point in August? I mean, I'm just wanting to leave here with clarity of what we were hoping to accomplish.
Definitely the first week of August is what I'm thinking, because once we do get the trial balance, we have to analyze it, group it, perform analytics. It usually takes 2 or 3 weeks from the time we receive the trial balance to the time we make our selections and begin our audit. As you know, County of Humboldt has a lot of funds, and we had a lot of adjustments last year. So it takes a little longer to prepare for your audit than it does for some other counties because of all the adjustments and trust funds. So, I'm hoping beginning of August, we'll receive the final TB, and then from there we can do our risk assessment and make our selections and just move forward. The other item we can begin on as well is the single audit. In order for us to do that, we will need all the CFA information. Those are the federal expenditures for all the programs. And that usually comes from the different departments. One of the things we do for the county is we compile the CFA for them. But in order to do that, we will need that information from the departments. And we will need the Auditor Controller's Office to sign off on the draft of the CFA. Once we do that, we can begin testing our programs.
Great, thank you, Rich. And I see Supervisor Wilson has his hand up. I'm kind of going, it sounds like we're combining C and D right now would be is that what you're seeing, Mike, on the?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up, and which is fine. from my perspective, the goal or what we're trying to get here is the team together to address both the C and D here. And I think that's what's happening. And if it's functional to sort of combine that conversation, I think I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we're not leaving the financial statement review too early to jump into the single audit review. But if they're combined, and that's in terms of like how we operate as a like I said, as a team to get things done, then that's fine with me.
I'm thinking for the purposes of the conversation, it's probably easier to kind of finish up the annual financial statement, but then go straight into, I think we can just roll into the other one. Karen and then Cheryl, and then, Scott. Sorry, Karen, I'm going to have, since Scott, might give him more work. Do you mind if we go to Scott and then to Karen and Cheryl? Yeah. Okay, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a clarification from Rich, because as you mentioned, Rich, there are a lot of funds that the county has. And you mentioned, the desire is to have that trial balance first part of August. And we're only a couple of weeks away till that date comes. And I'm wondering, just thinking out loud, and we've done this with other clients, they give a trial balance, but in tandem, we could work with Karen and her team on the fund reconciliations. And then if there are any adjustments as we complete those reconciliations, then the Auditor Controller's Office would then include those as proposed adjustments. Would that work for you and your team?
Yeah, that would definitely work. And we do that with several of our clients. The one thing we don't want to happen, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, Scott, is we don't want to have to post like 200, 300 entries.
Right.
So, but yeah, absolutely. Like if the trial balance is 99%, I don't know, even 95% complete, let's begin the audit, because we should have that should give us most of everything we need to begin the audit. If the only thing holding up the audit are capital assets or receivables, I mean, those are something you can adjust later on, once we get to that point. We're not going to write up findings based on, information that's not complete. We're going to wait till we get the final numbers, then we'll do our review. So that would definitely work for us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Karen.
Thank you. Rich, I think you will be pleased to see when you get the trial balance this year, we have made great improvements. It's no longer incomplete transfers. There's no longer incomplete transfers in the general ledger. And we've created reconciliations for taxes receivable, which didn't exist prior, and loans receivable, leases, due tos, due froms. There's accounts now that we are doing a lot of the reconciliation steps on our end to ensure that we can corroborate those ending balances. It will actually reduce the amount of work that you have to do on your end. We've also reduced the amount of object codes that are used, so you don't have to reclassify them or recategorize them, because departments have been very diligent in updating their chart of accounts and the way that they record transactions. So I appreciate everyone's help, and as I hear the conversation, I'm feeling more encouraged, because I think we're better off than I thought we were. And I think it's going to be less work for CLA. So it wouldn't take 2 months, because we are cleaning up a lot of it for you. And that was because of conversations we had in prior years where we looked at incomplete transfers and interfund transfers and all of those activities that didn't quite make sense. So we've, Jim Hussey and I have worked closely on cleaning all that up. We've also recategorized capital assets down to like the 7 or 8 categories recommended by the state controller, as opposed to the 1,000 that we had. So I'm excited, and I look forward to submitting that to you. And I wanted to share with Chair Bass and Vice Chair Wilson that I think it is appropriate to combine both the financial statement and the single audit, because we do them at the same time. One aspect of the single audit does include the passenger facility charges. And I know that Director Ruggets is here from the airport. I think it would be beneficial to include him in the conversation, because this will also involve coordination with his department as well as the Public Works Department following the transition.
Okay, so I do know Cody's on it, and you mentioned Public Works too. So should we ask, are you suggesting we, Cody, raise your hand. Where are you? I know he's here.
He's in the panelist group. He might
He's
need to
not-
be unmuted, possibly, Tracy,
Don't ask me how to operate that part.
or he could be promoted.
Okay, do we have him? Cody, can you hear us, Cody?
He's in there with his hand raised. It does show he's muted.
Okay,
Tracy there he goes.
okay. Just by the time we figure out Zoom, we'll be back in the building together. Woo.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Thank you, CAO Hayes. Yeah, as Auditor Controller Paz Dominguez mentioned, we are a little special in the aviation department in more ways than one, but as it relates to finances, we need to conduct a single audit of our PFC program per FAA, Federal Aviation Administration requirements. And we historically have had repeat findings with that audit, but Auditor Controller Paz Dominguez has assisted us in cleaning up that process, as well as with the external auditors and responding to past FAA concerns. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And we look forward to completing that single audit as soon as possible of that program again for last fiscal year so that we can continue to move forward.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Cody, for being on. And Karen, did you also want Director Mattson? You mentioned Public Works. I didn't know if you had wanted or if he had something on this item to say. I don't see his hand up.
I brought them up as optional because they are heavily involved with the single audit, and Director Mattson's team has been very helpful, very responsive to us for the audit. Charlotte Merkel is always providing us information for capital assets, construction in progress. She has experience in our department, so she's familiar with what is required. And because aviation used to be under Public Works, she's also able to assist with the passenger facility charges. Director Ragaz has a very talented and skilled person working in his department whose work papers I am very impressed by. So I think it's more optional for either of them if they want to share information with you about their process for the single audit and what it was historically done. I'm going to be working with both of them. It's definitely going to be a collaborative effort, and I'm feeling very positive about the improvements we can make together.
Okay, well, I do have Director Mattson is now on the screen. Tom?
So I just want to add quickly that I'm not the expert on this. My staff is. They're unavailable right now, but whatever Karen needs from us, the Auditor Controller needs from us, or Cody needs from us, we'll do everything we can to help out.
Great, thank you, Tom. So, all right, so Karen, you had said it makes sense to talk these two items together. So, Tom, your hand's still up. No, it's not. All right. So, yes, Mike, I was wondering what you thought of the direction of how to combine them so we can move forward on this and get what we need.
Well, I just wanted to and maybe I just didn't get this part with regards to the timing of the single audit relative to, I mean, I realize they're if they're not directly linked, they're closely associated. And I just wanted to hear, I'm hearing that the annual financial statement review is something that, you know, when the first week of August would be, that's a target. What about the annual single audit review and its target? Are they in same date, or are we talking about, you know, before or after? I just want to understand if those are.
Yes, Karen.
There are two categories of information that are required for the single audit. One is what Rich shared, and that's the CFA, the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. This is what we need from departments. Most of the departments have already submitted their schedule. It's an Excel spreadsheet where they list all of the federal awards they received. What we need additionally is the backup that justifies it and a way to track the activity so that Rich and his team are able to confirm that the money was spent according to federal guidelines. The other aspect besides the CFA is that passenger facility charge reconciliation, and that's the one that we'll be working with Tom and Cody on. I don't foresee any challenges doing that because there's a good audit trail from historical records. We'll be able to piece it together ourselves. I'm looking at the calendar. Today is the 22nd, and the first week of August is in a week and a couple days. My team is working overtime as by default. That's just what has been required during this declared state of emergency, and that's what we will continue to do. I am confident that we can meet this deadline.
Right.
If I am not, if anything happens from here through the end of next week, I will communicate with the CAO department and with Rich. I doubt it, but just know that if we do encounter any issues, we will communicate with them.
Okay, Mike, was that, I guess I go for Rich. Where do you changed on the screen, Rich? There you are. So you concur with what Karen just said in regarding timing, and just that should be what you need to move forward, hopefully, and
Yes, if we can get a working trial balance and all the CFA documentation, and I don't mean support, but just the CFA numbers, so we can at least do our major program determination, we can get started in early August. Karen, as far as contact information, I know you have a lot going on. My team's going to start pressing really hard, just because we want to help you meet this deadline. Are you the main person still? Do we just go through you, or is it, should there be another coordinator in your office? Could we reach out to Alicia, for example, if we need some information for the MPL or the OPEB?
Several weeks ago, I delivered to Ricky, part of your team, a listing for every department that participates in the single audit. I included a listing of who the department head is, who are the fiscal or finance experts for that department. So I believe that is with your team already. I don't have any reservations about your team reaching out to the departments directly. That might be most efficient.
Okay.
And that might actually help them prioritize if they know that the question's coming from you. I've also already started submitting things through the portal specifically for your testing. So cash receipts, checks, subsequent events, and I see that we're getting some more selections. So I think some work is being done, but I do recognize that the trial needs to be finalized.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be my primary focus, is the trial balance.
Okay. And then would we just copy you on every correspondence, Karen? Would that work for you? If I reached out to the CAO to request the most recent OPEB, does that work for you?
Yes. If
Okay.
you see me, I'm going to assume you don't need a direct response from me. Though.
Okay. Exactly. Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I like it.
okay, so I think I'll go to the CAO on this. So we've got C and D, and have we covered them sufficiently?
I think we have, yes. You should probably take public comment.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yes, Rich.
Yeah, just real quickly too, Karen, when we get the trial balance, we'll also need that GL detail immediately. That way we can make our selections. And I know in the past there's been a lag in receiving that information just for whatever reason, like IT couldn't remember how to run it, or so if we can get that in at the same time, that would help speed up the audit.
Yes, we have very talented people in IT. They've created reports for us that get us that information in real time and on demand. And
Perfect.
So it's coming to you at the same time.
Okay, and we'll need both the current year and subsequent, just to emphasize.
Yes.
Okay,
sir.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking in the participant queue or the attendees. I do not see any hands up if you wanted to comment on either C or D. If you are by phone, press *9, and if you are on the Zoom, hit the raise hand feature. Tracy, do you see anything? I'm on one screen. I can't hear you, Tracy.
There is one hand raised now.
Okay, thank you. Would you mind calling that number, since I actually am having a hard time on one screen, not losing this to get to the
Sure.
participant list?
Would Marie Essick please push star, what is it, 6 to speak?
Star 6. And we'll have the standard 3-minute time limit as well. So is she unmuted yet?
No.
Okay, so Marie, please press star 6 to unmute.
She might be coming in from her computer.
Okay, in
through the Zoom
that
link.
case, I have never come in from my computer, so her hand is up. So Tracy, can we figure out how to let poor Marie in here?
I
you
can only
unmute?
ask her to unmute.
Okay. All right, from the
There she goes.
defenders, public defender. Thank
She's-
you, Marie. I think we've got you now. Are you there? Marie? Okay. Where's our technical support guru?
She's unmuted, so I'm not sure. It must be on her end, Chair Bass.
All right. Well, we'll give a few seconds there. We'll see if any other hands have come up. If not, I don't see any others. So, Marie, I'm sorry if you can hear us, please say something so we know if you're there, and if not, apparently we've got a technical challenge. Okay. I am so sorry. I think we have a lot on our plate, so we'll be moving on. But Mike, do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I would suggest that if Marie is having technical difficulties calling in, maybe like a quick question or something like that, that maybe calling the board of supervisors office, and Kathy might be, or someone in the office might be able to take the question and relay it, and we can try and get it that way. We're trying to cobble together these technologies sometimes. And
for Tracy, would that be 476-2390?
Correct.
Okay, so Marie, if you can hear us, just call in 476-2390. We don't want to not hear from you. We just don't know where you are. Zoom. Okay, so we'll give Maria a moment here.
And I would suggest just moving on at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, if she calls, we can have Tracy relay the comment to us.
Oh, looks like Tracy's on the phone.
Hi, Virginia. I'm going to put
Good idea,
Marie,
Supervisor Wilson.
I'm going to put
Hello?
Marie on speakerphone, so I think should be able to go ahead, Marie.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Chair Bass. I'm sorry I am having technical difficulties. I just wanted to mention that if I would like to volunteer in any way I could help Karen with the audit. Prior to working for the county, I've been a finance director for over 20 years. So I've worked with auditors, and I'm also very familiar with government fund accounting, as I've worked for multiple government agencies. So I just wanted to put that out there and mention that there are county employees out there that do have experience that would be available to assist for a short period of time.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Marie. I'm glad Mike thought of how we could hear your comments.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Now we know where to find you too. And I'm sure Karen is probably writing that down. So, all right.
Great. Bye-bye, Marie. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we think we can move on from the annual financial statement review and the single audit review. All right. Thank you for everyone's attention on that and pulling a team together from all over the place. Basically, we'll make this happen. And thank you, Rich, for being here too. Oh, and Scott. All right, so Supervisor Wilson, since you had switched things up, where do you have what else? I guess I'll ask Alicia, what else would you consider a timeliness issue? And then I'll ask Supervisor Wilson.
Item number 5 under the timing of charter responsibilities, that is the financial transactions report.
Okay.
We have received communications from the state controller that was due 7 months after the close of the year. They sent us a notification in February and have begun following up in recent weeks looking for that. I would defer to Karen on what's with the particulars of that. I think probably the working trial balance is one of the large components needed for that project, but the state controller is indicating fines may be imposed and that they could come to the organization and prepare that document for us if we're not able to do that. So I would like to prevent that.
Great, thank you. Karen, can you probably can have the info that will clear this one up for us, so.
Yeah, I actually would welcome the state controller coming to prepare the financial transactions report. What they charge is not a penalty. What they charge is the cost of their travel to do it. Historically, this department has prepared the financial transactions report after the audit is completed. They just take the information from the audit and put it into the state controller's website for the financial transactions report. This is one of those disconnects that exists with government agencies and the deadlines they impose, where the state controller is the agency that allowed for an extension of the audit. That's the same agency that's requiring the financial transactions report be submitted prior to the audit being due. So I did communicate with the state controller's office representative and I asked them, are you advising me to turn in information that is unaudited? And she said she would be fine with that. So now with the understanding that unaudited information is acceptable to the state controller, we can certainly turn that information in. There is still a challenge with the cross-referencing. The financial transactions report requires information be reported in a very specific way that is different from what this county of Humboldt records in their general ledger. It also requires that we include all of the dependent special districts information as blended component units of our financials. So there again, we need that collaboration from those dependent districts. One of them is, I believe, represented by the CAO's office. That's the CSA number 4. So we'll also need to collaborate with them on that. It's going to be a combination of all of that activity together, still unaudited. I do question why the state controller would require unaudited information. But not for me to say anymore because I like the state controller's office. But yeah, we will be submitting unaudited information.
Great, thank you, Karen. And I was gonna go to you next, Scott, just wondering if you had the same understanding that whatever the dollar amount is to prepare, and does this happen in many counties? But also the auditor brought a couple of questions up that hopefully you can answer as well.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. So we work with, our firm works with a lot of counties. And in my former life as a finance director for government agencies, I've always had that responsibility to complete the financial transaction report. I do want to point out that when this came to our attention, we reached out to a consultant that we usually subcontract with on behalf of our county and city clients to prepare the financial transaction report. And we did receive a quote from them. And they have this expertise. It's very different format, this financial transaction report. It's kind of an unusual format, and it's not consistent with the audit, the actual audit financial statements. So it gets a bit complex. But this company, we did receive a quote from them. They would be, and we could subcontract under our contract with the county with them, and they proposed $5,200 to compile the report under the circumstances that we're aware of. So for $5,200, we could move forward and assist the auditor's office with this subject matter expert. They do these, they do a lot of these financial transaction reports for counties and cities. It's up to the county and to Karen if she'd like to pursue that opportunity.
Right. Well, and yeah, I guess in my mind frame, we're trying to get everything done that we possibly can and get ourselves on the right track moving forward. To me, that sounds reasonable, but I'm not the, we get to, you know, we get to sometimes participate, but I'm wondering, Ms. Hayes, where would you find that? I mean, to me, that seems reasonable. 5,200, anyone like having a mic? Sorry, Mike might think that's not reasonable.
I think it's very reasonable if
Okay.
so long as, I mean, and I think that the CAO has the authority.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Do that, and I just want to, it kind of loops back to if the auditor controller believes that that's a you know, something that's going to help out. So I want to hear from her.
Yeah. Okay, so assuming Alicia would say she could find that many, Karen, is that something that Scott mentioned that you believe would be beneficial? I mean, it seems like it could help take something off the plate, maybe.
Yes, it's more, well, the state controller would charge 5,000 to do the same thing. But I know, because I talked to the state controller's office staff, that they are also short-staffed and would likely, this would be a burden to them to have to do. So for $200 more, it gives relief to the state controller as well. I'm okay with it. And I would welcome the assistance, and I appreciate, Scott, that you know these people and brought them up. Thank you.
All right, so that sounds like a positive move on that one. So so with that, I guess we will see if there's any public comment on that item. See if anyone else wants to volunteer to help. That sounds, I like the trend here. Supervisor Wilson.
I'm just wondering, are we taking public comment on every sub item of this agenda? And I think, I mean, I like public comment, but at some point we have to be efficient in our
I would agree with you, but I think Alicia had mentioned that going back to the separate ones, and we don't have a lot of hands up. I could imagine it could get very unwieldy, but I currently do not see any hands up right now on this piece. And Tracy, well, Karen has her hand up. Is there any, hold on, Karen, just a moment. Tracy, let me know if someone does come up from the public that has a hand raised. All right, Karen.
Thank you. I did want to point out in the agenda, item 6, well, 1B6 says delinquent trial balance. I wonder if that could be corrected, as it is not actually delinquent.
Oh, sure. Well, and we haven't actually, we can move that to that one. After I make sure there's no public comment, let's go straight to that one so we can take care of it for you. So Karen.
I think we just covered it.
Did you? Okay, Alicia, I'm just making sure that the delinquent trial balance falls in with the delinquent financial transaction report. And if you think it's been sufficiently covered, it's the language.
Yeah, we can. I'm certainly open to striking the word delinquent. That is just a report prepared internally, which will assist with completing the single audit and the financial transactions report.
Okay, so then those two we can take off of this. Thank you, Karen, for bringing that up. Tracy, do you see any hands up yet?
No,
all right.
comment right now.
So we'll take those two off the list. I'd actually, Alicia, I mean, I know I had some questions. I did, you know, and Karen, I appreciate you being here today because I know you've got a lot going on. There was a few things that I was hoping you could provide clarification on for me. And one was the IRS liens, because I know last time when we brought it up, you were concerned that with Brown Act, that it was not on the agenda. So that's why I wanted to put it on in case you, I understand one of them have been removed. If there's something you can add on the process of how that's moving forward, or if it's all taken care of, then that's wonderful too.
Thank you. So the IRS liens have been resolved. They've been released. we work directly with Officer Kidd. She's the revenue officer for the Internal Revenue Service. She explained to me that when she releases the liens, she sends that information to a central office who then prepares the mailing and issues the formal letters. And that is what is resulting in a time delay from when she releases something to when a formal notice is mailed. I did receive confirmation from the clerk recorder Sanders that she received that first release of lien notice. And maybe Director Rockets can talk about it too. When we first learned of the lien, we learned from a vendor that works with aviation, and he was able to communicate directly with Revenue Officer Kidd, and they resolved the lien. So this is the timing impacts of COVID, where they have revenue officers working remotely, not in their central office, and they have a different office generating all the formal letters. So that's what's happening right now. But I am not concerned with the liens. They've been released. It's been dealt
Yeah,
with.
no, and I appreciate that, and we will hear from Cody. I guess the part that I was concerned about was not so much liens, because I know that the work was done, but that however the IRS was sending the information, and it appears that it was received, but no one was, the letters, I think we got like 3 notices before action started being taken. So I guess what I'd ask you, now that we know this is all taken care of, maybe we can help you come up with a system. I just feel like something got lost that's really important, and you guys had done the work, you just didn't have successful communication that there was an issue until many months into it. So we don't need to solve that here, but I think we'd all be willing to work and try to help any way we can to make sure that those important things do get to you and don't, because you guys are so busy. I know they get lost in inboxes, and it's hard. So just for future conversation, perhaps between you and I and Alicia, let's try to find a way so that nothing accidentally ends up not getting in the right spot soon enough, because I think it's easier to get it done sooner. And I think you were put through a whole lot of stress that was probably unnecessary by that time. So I do appreciate you able to come and tell us today that it is resolved, because that takes the load off of my mind. So I appreciate it. Any of the other committee members have any questions on this? Because it seems pretty simple. And any members of the public, Tracy? No? All right, so we'll move on to Supervisor Wilson, where we're kind of like picking and choosing between here. I do know we have Public Works. Actually, I did ask Tom Matson to be here because I had some, I think, confusion and misunderstanding, because it's a very complex process about how Public Works gets their monies back from projects. And I had left the last meeting with the impression that it could be like reapplied for, or it could be gotten in the future. And that's not exactly what I was hearing from Director Matson. So I'm hoping, Tom, can you help for anyone else that may have been wondering after the last meeting, how is the process and what can we do? I mean, have you lost money that you've lost, and what can we do to help you in the future on that?
So I have a PowerPoint, if I could share my screen. I really want to focus on the importance of these processes and what these processes are. So if I could share my screen.
Tracy, can you give him, or somebody give him that ability?
He should be able to there you go. He's good.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
So first, I want to focus on our road report. Our road report isn't, just for Public Works. There's actually a tickler in there that applies to the entire county if it's not completed in time. And that's section 2155 of Street and Highways Code that states that no state money shall be allocated to or made available for expenditure by any county or city at any time when such city or county is delinquent in filing the report provided for in section 2151. The reason that's so important is that's all county departments, not just Public Works. That affects everybody. I do want to note, that when we brought this up last year, the auditor's office did pivot immediately. This does not require the county to be closed and an audit to be done. It just requires certain budgets within Public Works related to the gas tax to be finalized. So the auditor's office was able to pivot and prioritize Public Works last year and get those closed. While we were past the December 1st deadline, we had no repercussions. We were in constant contact with the auditor and the state controller's office. They were able to provide some flexibility and come in after the December 1st, complete the road report based on all the work the auditor's office did. And that's just, we're looking at that, that's one of the reasons that is so important for year end and budget closures and audits. And this is just one of those risks that we face. There are many risks we face throughout all of our budget units. Realistically, any federal funding program is an at-risk program, because if the feds do not vote the funding in, you've spent that money and you won't get it reimbursed. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify this on why the road report is so important. We are scheduled for early November this year, and after discussions with the auditor's office, I believe that this is, not going to be an issue this year.
All right.
The
Oops.
next issue is our independent cost rate program. The process for doing this does require the county books to be closed. After the books are closed, we calculate what our ICRP is. And this is really what is our overhead that under certain federal programs we can charge to projects. Note that not all federal programs allow us to charge this to them. FEMA projects do not allow us to charge an ICRP rate. The significance of that is the independent cost rate is significantly above the standard overhead allowable rate of 10%. So this really applies to the federal projects that come through and are monitored by Caltrans in the state of California, including emergency response, which is storm damage on our major roads, where FEMA covers the minor roads, but the major roads are covered by federal highways through the ER program in Caltrans. So after the county audit is complete, we have to actually submit a hard copy of that with our ICRP to Caltrans Office of Independent Office of Audits and Investigations. I do want to give I'm going a little bit detail here, because this program is a lot of people don't know about it and what it is. For years, the county did not have an ICRP simply because the Office of Audits and Investigations took so long to review and approve the ICRPs that projects were closed that they were valid for. So for years, we just took the 10%. We made a change through the State Transportation Co-op Committee in the state and federal government that allows us now to go at risk when we submit the ICRP. And so that means that, we charge these rates, but then after the audits, investigations, reviews in detail, they may make changes and we may get more money, or we may have to pay money back if we didn't get it exactly right. Yeah, we have to have approval before submitting, and this is always after the fact, and projects are always at risk because we're constantly closing projects. Even when we close, the county's closed and audits done in a timely manner, there are still projects that are closed well before we can add our ICRP costs to those projects. Just some basic information. I don't need to dwell on that. Just for informational purpose, we looked at the last 3 years, and it varies by year. This year is very important to us, the 328,000. If it depends on the number of qualifiable projects that we close each year. It's not a set number each year. It varies based on what our rates are for the specific years and how many projects we do. For this year and next year, we are doing a huge number of qualifiable reimbursable projects. And that's why it's so important we get the books closed and our audits done, especially the next 2 years. And this is a good example of why it is so important. You can see our rates here. You know, some of our rates, you know, like our land use division, their overhead is close to 100%, because you know, we bill direct rates on engineering and maintenance people. That means we can bill all the cost of our people, our equipment. But when we look at our office divisions, engineering, business, natural resources, there's a lot of overhead. There's computers that you have to buy on a regular basis. There's the rent, there's the utilities. All of those are qualifiable overhead costs that can be recovered. And as you can see, our rates are significantly above the baseline. If you don't do one, you can only claim 10%. We started in, this is a lot of work to do. A lot of agencies don't do this. They just claim the 10% because the amount of work, but because of the revenue that it generates for us, we do involve ourselves in this program and involve heavily trying to figure it out. And as you can see that, you know, when it says adjustment due to audit, that's after this, not after the state receives it and okays us to use it. It's after they've received it, okayed us to use it, and then done a detailed review and come back and said, you know, you included this, this is not allowable, or you didn't include this, you can add this. So that's really all I had. I think, you know, when we talk about lost revenue, we have projects that we've closed in 18, 19, and 19, 20 that we're not going to be able to bill for. Even 2021, we may have projects at the beginning of the year. By the time the RCRP gets through the process, we won't be able to bill for. This is the maximum amount that we could bill for. And I can tell you under, you know, 18, 19, one project that we thought was closed, we actually got a call from Caltrans last week and said, you know, we haven't closed it yet. I know you closed it, but we haven't, it's still open. And so we were able to bill and recover that funding. So we're constantly going back and forth. You know, I can certainly say there are projects that closed that we didn't have an approved ICRP for, and so we could only bill the 10%. But you know, I show these numbers just to show how important it is to us and how important it is that, you know, the county work together as a team to close its books and get its audit done. And with that, I would say to Karen, you know my staff well, and so if there's anything they can do to help you, feel free to call on them.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, it is very complex, and I appreciate that explanation. So sounds like, you know, you've got some staff that can help, and I'm wondering, you know, Karen, is this something, Scott Johnson, poor Scott, we keep calling him like Superman, Scott. What are your thoughts on how we can help with this too? Just because there is looking like quite a few dollars that it's going up a bit, and I would like to make sure that we give you what you need so that we can actually make sure we take advantage of that opportunity. So,
Madam Chair.
Oh,
yes, Tom. Whoops, sorry, I got Tom. Oh no, Scott.
Sorry.
I'm hearing voices. Yeah.
My raised hand doesn't work. My apologies. I just had a couple comments and maybe some questions from Tom. And Tom, I'm Scott Johnson. I'm a partner at MGO, and we're assisting the county on various fiscal consulting projects. And in my former life, you know, I was a finance director for many years, a controller treasurer. And so I've actually been very involved in a lot of cost allocation plans and indirect cost plans. And for example, in San Jose, when I was finance director, the Public Works Department had a huge capital program. And I'm just wondering, because I believe there's an opportunity to do what's called a true up, because typically you'll have a situation where you start a fiscal year, but your prior year audit's not going to be done until 6 to 9 months later. And so typically the process that I've been involved in is we base the numbers on the prior year audit, and then the next year we'll do a true up after the subsequent year's audit is completed. So that might be a way that you can streamline the process. I'm pretty sure it's allowable because as I say, I've been involved with these cost allocation plans with various state and federal agencies.
Okay, Tom?
So when you talk about San Jose, you're talking about a huge agency with lots of staff.
Yeah,
The true up version of the ICRP actually basically requires you to do it twice a year. That comes at a significant cost for us. If I'm looking at millions of dollars of reimbursement, I certainly would be doing that. And in fact, we've requested a meeting with the state controller's office because when we selected this option, it was basically once you select that one version, you do that version for the rest of your career. So we're working with the state controller's office, especially over the next 2 years, looking at our revenue. But then we have to compare that back to what is our cost going to have to be? Because our fiscal staff is, fully involved all year long. And if it's at budget time that they have to do this, it's not going to happen. And so we have to look at that. Is it going to cost us 50 grand? And what's it going to get us? So yes, I'm aware that's out there. There's actually 3 different versions of an ICRP. And realistically, as a small agency, as I've said, many small agencies don't even do this just because of the work it requires going in and the cost to do that. We chose this version because it got us into the program and we only had to do it once a year. So that is a consideration, and that is something that we're talking with the state about being able to switch if possible. Like I said, because the next 2 years are going to be huge for us in revenue recovery under the ICRP.
so Tom, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about it because I don't believe that it requires doing it twice a year. But I think that there is an option to do that true up in the subsequent year, but we can talk offline about it. The other thought I had through the auditor controller is that there is a firm that's assisting the auditor's office on the countywide cost allocation plan. And they specialize in that area. And it's, it comes at a pretty good price, actually, a pretty reasonable price. And I'm wondering if that firm can assist, because they have assisted other agencies that I've worked at on these various cost allocation plans. So that could be another resource to Tom, for you and Karen, to assist both of you in pursuing, achieving this opportunity.
And Karen, I mean, that seems like a plan to me, but Karen, what are your thoughts on that? Just to.
So I have so many thoughts. One is I am incredibly grateful for Director Mattson because he and I have been able to develop a good communication, good relationship. He's always very responsive, and not just on a professional level, but also just like you hanging in there kind of thing. And I really appreciate that because these, being in these positions, it's very taxing on a person. So I appreciate that fellowship and that teamwork. Now that we know this is an issue, he has communicated deadlines to me. I now understand what he needs from me in order for him to be able to do his tasks. I do also appreciate Scott Johnson bringing up MGT. So that's who we use for the cost plan. I don't know what MGT stands for, but they are very helpful. They take all of our reconciled information and they compile the cost plan. It's several hundred pages. I think they would be more than happy to assist with the indirect cost plan if that was something Director Mattson wanted to pursue. I believe they charge us about $9 grand a year for the cost plan. I'm not sure how much they would charge for the indirect cost plan. As far as I understand right now, and please correct me, Director Mattson, if I'm wrong, what he needs from me is to make sure that fiscal year 2021 closes timely. Then he won't run the risk of losing that amount that showed on the screen. And we are on track to do that. Some departments are still submitting some items in past the due dates that we've handed out, but I'm not too concerned because I am seeing high rates of responsiveness from all departments. I am supportive of asking MGT if you'd like me to.
Thank you, Karen. Tom?
Well, I'm always willing to learn more. So I would take Scott up on his offer to sit down and talk about this in detail. If there's different ways to make a meal, I'm always interested in how to cook it, especially if it generates a better meal. And so again, I want to thank Karen for her efforts as well. This is it's a team effort here at the county, and we each have to learn each other and what each other needs, and then just, solve the problem and move forward.
Great. Thank you, Tom. I think it must be close to lunchtime with your food analogy. So anyone else? I mean, Michael, you guys have all been very patient. It just seems like we have a lot of things to work through that I'm appreciative that we seem to be plunking away. Anyone else from the committee want to comment on this item? Seems like we have some offline agreement to try to see what can be done. So, Tracy, are there any hands up on this item? No hands up still? All right, well, there you go. And I did also, and thank you all for chiming in, and it makes me feel much better that there's an understanding and a path forward. So I do appreciate that. And then I did ask the auditor, not auditor, well, I'd like both the auditor and treasurer tax collector. Last time there was conversation on the apportionment, and and then it seemed like there might've needed, it may not have been quite able to be done yet. And I would like a little conversation on, did that get done? I'm assuming it did, but I figured since it was talked about quite a lot last time, I just would like to have that clarity for the group here. So I don't know, John, Director, I'm demoting you, John. I don't know. John?
Chair Bass, thank you very much. And we were able to apportion interest for the fiscal year 1920 year, which was the end of the fourth quarter, June 30th, 2020, on I think it was June 16th. And so that's done. I reported to the state controller's office that day. And I think this submittal of the journal to the auditor's office was done on June 17th. And I'm not sure where that resides, but that was a good thing to get done. And we look forward to being able to apportion additional quarters to be more timely. And I do want to make another comment that I'm very pleased that this has been a very productive and collaborative meeting today. I think that there's been a lot of progress, and that I'm very happy that people are on the same page and working together to get this all done. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. And Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I mean, I agree with John on the tone of the meeting. I really appreciate this.
I can confirm that the interest apportionment journal that Treasurer Tax Collector submitted has been posted with no adjustments. And I appreciate his team. They work closely with my team. So this is a task where John and I are really not the ones doing the actual work. And so we rely heavily on our skilled workforce. They've developed good communication themselves too. And I appreciate that his team was able to make adjustments before sending it to us for errors that we knew about. So there were situations where deposits were double posted between our offices, or maybe they went into the wrong accounts. His team was proactive and corrected those through the interest apportionment process, and then that resulted in saving us some steps. So I really appreciate the work that they put in. And that journal has been posted, and we will continue to work with his office in collaboration with MGO to combine both the bank reconciliation and the interest apportionment. I think we will all benefit from having a documented procedure to train ourselves and future staff. We're heading in the right direction. I am very proud to work with both of them on this. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Well, that's good. Tracy, there's still no hands up, right, for public comment? We got
Right.
Corey, but you're not public yet, Corey. You're one of us.
Yes, I see no attendance hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Corey.
Yeah, I had a question regarding if there's a plan or a timeline when the 2021 quarter interest will be apportioned. Because we're getting ready to close the school's books. And of course, we don't have any interest for the 2021 school year. So we have to know how we need to report it and what quarters will need to be accruals what quarters we'll be able to receive. So I was just curious what the plan was.
John?
Sure, I'm happy to comment on that. And we cannot apportion interest until the auditor controller has done their work relative to all the transactions being reconciled in the funds. And so I'm happy to, our staff is happy to work with the auditor controller in any way possible to help speed that process, but we really cannot do our end of the interest apportionment process until the auditor controller tells us, go ahead, we're done on our end, and go ahead and apportion interest. And I know the auditor controller's office has got a lot of stuff on their plate right now, and we're happy to help in any way we can, but it would be really good to catch up, because I know a lot of the budget process is for independent districts and the school districts. They do need to know the amount of interest that they will be apportioned so that they can include that in their budgeting process.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, so when we had a meeting, a joint meeting with the treasurer tax collector to get on the same page about the interest apportionment process. And in that meeting, we determined that the preference is, on the treasurer tax collector side, they prefer that we finalize all of our adjustments in the fund balances before they apportion interest based on the cash balances. And we can make that accommodation, we can make that change on our end. What's been a challenge for our department is that we continue to receive journal entries and transactions requests from departments for previous quarters. Just this week, we received a journal request for posting back to July of 2020. We want to get to the point where all departments are on the same timelines, same deadlines, but we have made many allowances because we recognize the challenges presented by COVID. Now, as things become more stable and the workforce isn't experiencing such high rates of turnover and medical leave, I think we'll be in a better position to get everyone back on set schedules and deadlines. I will check in with our accountant team, look through our journal queue. I think I'm fairly confident that the first quarter of 2021 is done. We're no longer posting any transactions there. There may be some stragglers for quarter two, but I will communicate with the treasurer tax collector department and let them know as I can confirm that we're done with the adjustments so that they can do the process as they want to do it. There is ability for the treasurer tax collector to apportion interest based on just cash balances, but it is my understanding that it would be better for the organization if we did collaborate together and make sure that our process is in line with his. So that's going to be our goal going forward. And so Corey, to answer your question, I'm going to be looking at this week. So I'll know this week how far we are with the quarters. And it usually takes I'll let him say confirm, but I think it takes him about a week to be able to generate the journal for us to post, and then we can work on it immediately.
And I appreciate that, Karen. I appreciate both of you guys working together on this process going forward, because it's a struggle for all of us when quarters aren't closed. And, we try in schools, we close monthly. By the end of the following month, the previous month is closed. So we actually don't backdate. So I found that kind of interesting when you said some departments are backdating to July, because I'm like, oh, we wouldn't be able to do that. But I appreciate the information. Anything you can add later on, Karen, once you look into it, I appreciate.
And thank you. And Alicia, I have a question for you. Karen brought up a point about hearing, getting more stuff from departments. Is there some, and I know COVID probably still has got things kind of messed up. Do you see a process where we can get everyone on a timeline or on something so that we can move more as a and together, in step. I don't know if that's possible. And John has his hand up, so I'm not sure. Who wants to? I'll go to Alicia first, and I'll go to you, John.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly happy to put pressure where pressure is due. If the auditor controller looped me into those communications on what was lacking. I meet monthly with department heads, so I could use that time slot as an opportunity. I can also email them, call them. I have no problem assisting with that process.
Okay, and John, you were going to say something.
Yes, I did want to say something. And Karen mentioned the meeting that we had some few weeks ago about coordinating for interest apportionment. And during that meeting, we did discuss having a joint letter that would be composed between our departments and then sent out to all departments across the county. And CAO Hayes should maybe be tied into that letter, whereby all departments are required to submit their journals and all their transactions by a specific date after the end of each quarter. And I think that is critical in making sure that all these processes follow a specific timeline. And I feel for the auditor controller's staff in that receiving things way out of date really screws up things. And so I think that if we mandate a process across all county departments to submit transactions by specific dates, and Karen, my recollection is that it was 10 days after the quarter end that we were talking about, but we'll refine that and compose a letter, memo to go out to all departments, and CAO Hayes, if that'd be great if you were involved with that too, so that there is a clear direction for all departments. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. That sounds useful. Alicia, is that? Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next item. Well, we have two that I see that there's the, I'm going to go to Alicia. I'm not sure which one is more time sensitive. Financial policy review, and then we've got the annual presentation to the Board of Supervisors. I think is what we've got left.
The annual presentation to the Board of Supervisors is contingent upon completing the single audit. So I think it's safe to say that that date is to be determined, probably going to be sometime in the fall, October-ish, if we can meet the September 30 deadline to get that completed. And then the financial policy review is work being done in conjunction with MGO and the auditor controller. So I would ask for either of them to provide an update on that work.
And Mike has a question.
Yeah.
It's not a question, it's just an observation. We're past time on what we're doing here. And so it seems like
actually we extended it to 2 hours. It's in your calendar. Originally it was for 1.5.
It is not in my calendar that way. Maybe
you can almost go get lunch.
All right, never mind. Proceed.
We're on the downhill slide. We're all hungry.
All
All right. Back to what we were saying. Yeah. Alicia?
Karen or Scott just raised his hand.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. Scott.
Thank you. In the interest of time, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. So this is another project that MGO was tasked to facilitate, and that was the development of a fiscal policy manual. Many counties, many public agencies have manuals under various categories. And in this case, early on, it was identified the need in development of a fiscal policy manual that would be available to the public and to county staff to clarify policies and procedure. So this has been a very collaborative process. We have been working directly with County Counsel's office, both Jefferson and Scott Miles. The County Administrator's office, Amy and Alicia. We worked very directly, and your Auditor Controller, Karen Paz Dominguez, provided some great input and resources for us. And we also worked with your Human Resources Director and your Treasurer Tax Collector, John Bartholomew. So at this point, we were asked to look at the county of Sonoma, because Sonoma County has a very good fiscal policy manual. But in addition, we took a look at some other counties. We looked at Santa Barbara, Kern, and Glenn counties. And then just because of my prior experience, the city of San Jose has some good policies that we were also able to utilize and customize. So we have provided to that group that I mentioned earlier, we provided a table of contents with the title and the classifications of the various policies. And at this time, we have 26 policies that we either developed or we consolidated of policies that the board has already approved. So there are 26 policies. We're currently going through our internal quality assurance process and reviewing the document. And we plan to submit the draft policy manual to the internal county staff group next week, early next week. Now, after we get input from the county staff group, we'll make any modifications. And then the plan on next steps is to bring the policy manual forward to the audit committee for your review and input. And once we receive that and make any potential modifications, then ultimately it would go forward to the board for your board's approval. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I'll ask Tracy one more time. Are there any hands up? I'm assuming no.
I don't see any, Chair Bass.
All right. Yeah, so I guess that we've covered it. I do want to say, you know, I appreciate everyone coming together for this date. I know it was not optimal. And Karen, I know you're like snowed, and actually I'm sure a lot of people are, but there was a time sensitive nature with the Rich Gonzalez one. So I really appreciate that we were able to pull together, got some clarity. I think we've got some abilities to work. We've got some plans in place, and hopefully we can get you what you need, Karen, and but then also just the rest of the team to, you know, start getting us some little less bumpy road. And we'll try not to have another surprise meeting or a last minute meeting. I think our next one will be scheduled in August. Is that correct, Alicia?
Yes, that was the next anticipated meeting.
Okay, do we have a date on that? You might have it in here.
I do not have a date on that offhand.
Well, Karen-
Kathy might have it on her radar.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, Karen has her hand up. I'd like to find out, you know, since I know it's been hard to coordinate what, you know, if you can find, what would you think Karen could work with your schedule with all the working around?
If a meeting is to be held in August, I'd like to request that it be at the end of August, because if the trial balance is due the first week of August, that's really when the work begins with us and CLA, and it encompasses interviews, walkthroughs, observations. It's gonna be very heavy for my team. We're gonna be asked to pull up documentation for hundreds of transactions. The beginning of August is not going to be ideal. I'd like to request maybe towards the end.
All right, that sounds reasonable to me. I see Mike has his hand up. And then as long as we, oh, Karen, I'm sorry, Kathy had, I don't know if we are determined if we are through our charter, are we supposed to have it within a specific amount of time, or can we push it till I mean, I'm happy to have it at the end.
The
Kathy
charter,
had her hand up.
the charter says 4 times a year. And we had potentially targeted August 26th at 10:30 in the morning again as the next scheduled audit committee date.
Is that, Karen, is that close enough to the end of August? Or if you have a suggested day?
If I
you'd
could
like to
make a
identify.
suggestion, Chair Bass?
Sure. Yes.
Maybe it would be prudent to push it out to September 30th. That's the day that the audit is due. And that way we are not consuming Karen's time during this imperative time. And I think we'll all be chomping at the bit on that day to know whether or not we've met the deadline.
Will that work for you, Karen? And if you want to work with us.
Yes, so September 30th is a big day. That's also the end of a quarter. Maybe October 1st. I don't know. A lot of things are due that day. I
Okay.
will attend if it's the last week of August. I will attend if it's September 30th, but if it's really a wish.
Well, Alicia, can we work with Karen's office? I mean, because yeah, we'd hate to have it on a day that has another big deadline on it. So,
Thank you. I really do appreciate that consideration because we want to participate. We want to be here. We find value in this. We enjoy talking about this. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
thanks, Karen. And Mike?
Yeah, I would just hope that since the timing is a bit flexible on this, that just consideration of these deadlines, but also there's been a lot of collaborative discussion today. There's been a lot of good communication. And so maybe just thinking about that, this meeting is functioning as it's supposed to, as a tool to get us into that, to be, better functioning. And so if it's 2 weeks before a deadline, maybe that's the time to have a meeting like this to make sure that communications are all up, we're doing all those things we need to do. Or maybe as Alicia has proposed, is kind of a post deadline version. So just I think that the auditor, controller, and the CAO's office and folks can work it out when it's just going to be most effective, when are we going to derive the most value, and being flexible about that. So I appreciate this.
And I agree, just that hopefully the conversations can happen sooner rather than later so everybody can get it on. And those of us in the county, we're one thing, but we do have the members from the community as well who are spending their time with us today. And so hopefully we'll know sooner rather than later so everyone has an opportunity to block it off. But definitely, I think, Karen, it's important for you to be here. So I think for you to work with the CAO's office to find a date that works for you, even though we love to see Jim also. But, it just makes more sense to try to frame it at a time that will work. So, all right, does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Other than I have great appreciation for all of you taking the time out in the middle of your summer on a crazy busy time. So, and Karen, you got little ones at home. Your time's even crazier. All right. I don't see any hands up.
Everyone, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Mike, we're 15 minutes early, Mike. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll use it wisely.